All right, so hello and welcome to another episode of Part of the Dusting Off Construction with Caitlin and Jillian. We're your hosts, Caitlin
and Jillian,
and we're here dusting off the topic of DOTs with Chris Peoples, Chief Operating Officer of the North Carolina Department of Transportation. So let's get to it. Chris, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I am Chris Peoples, Chief Operating Officer with North Carolina Department of Transportation.
Awesome. So I'm going to just lead off with, what is your history with NCDOT? I read a little bit about you, so I do know that you've been with NCDOT for a while, so I'd love to hear a little bit more from your side.
Yeah, so I actually have a even longer history than anything you're going to be able to read about. When I was born, my father was in school at NC State University, working towards a civil engineering degree, and while he was doing that, he was also working for NCDOT in the traffic engineering division. And so I was born during that time period. So I have essentially spent my whole 52 years of my life around North Carolina Department of Transportation, because my father had a 33-and-a-half-year career with NCDOT before he retired, and eventually ended up working in the transportation industry for another 15 years after that.
Oh, wow.
So, and then my actual employment with NCDOT started in 1990 while I was in school at NC State, and I was pursuing a chemical engineering degree. And I worked the first summer of my freshman year, so the summer after my freshman year, on a survey crew with the department as an intern. And then a couple of years later, I worked as an intern at the Materials and Test Chemical Testing Laboratory. So then I graduated from school in '93, and then shortly after that, decided I didn't want to really be a chemical engineer, and probably should have listened to my father's advice a long time ago and gone into civil engineering, because that's pretty much what I gravitated towards anyway. So I went back and started as a temporary at the Materials and Test Laboratory shortly after I graduated, and worked on and off temporary for the course of about 12 months, and finally got my permanent position, my first permanent position with the department in 1995, and then immediately started relocating to Asheville, North Carolina, where I essentially set up a laboratory up there to do some hot rock testing. And the hot rock meaning that it had the potential to form sulfuric acid, and Asheville's in a very pristine part of the North Carolina mountains. And we were building an interstate through Madison County, which is just northwest of Asheville, on tying I-26 from the Asheville area to Johnson City, Tennessee. And so it was a lot of open cut, a lot of moving of materials. And when they did that, they realized that they were in various zones up there where there was pyrite in the rock. And so that had the potential to form sulfuric acid and could potentially kill trout.
No, wow, sounds dangerous.
That was my first endeavor with the department, was to learn how to determine the potential for that sulfuric acid to form, and then also calculate how to treat it if that was the case, because that material still had to be wasted somewhere. So you had to figure out how you were going to neutralize it. While I was up there, I did a lot of other stuff. I mean, that was a full-time job, but there was some downtime with it, depending on how much material was being blasted and moved throughout the course of a several-year project. So during the downtime, I learned how to do all the other stuff that the Asheville laboratory was responsible for: testing concrete, testing soils, testing aggregate. And then our local field materials office was there as well, and so I got to do a lot of inspections and going to precast plants, going to aggregate facilities, going to asphalt plants, concrete plants, pretty much anything that a materials person would do. So I got to learn all that in a very short period of time. So it was a really good opportunity for me. And then after about 2 years in Asheville, I had spent a year going back and forth, and then I lived permanently in Asheville for 2 years. After that time period, decided I want to get back closer to Raleigh, and was looking for some other opportunities, and there were more opportunities in Raleigh with the department than there were in Asheville. So I took a lateral transfer back to the lab in Raleigh, and 3 months later got my first engineering position in the physical testing laboratory. And then from there, my career has just progressed on. I spent, from 95 until 2019 in the materials unit. Almost 10 years of that, I was the state materials engineer, worked in various roles before that, and then came to the chief engineer's office in 2019 as the director of field support, and I was responsible for the materials unit, the construction unit, contract standards, the right-of-way unit, and the design build unit. And then after a short stint in that role, I became deputy chief engineer in 2020, and I picked up another handful of units, mostly related to asset management, structures management, roadside environmental, and then several other units within the department, including the state road maintenance unit. And then in May of 2022, I was named chief engineer, and so I was responsible during that period of time for all of the 14 highway divisions, all of those previous units that I mentioned before, our technical services division, our traffic and mobility safety division, and then several other groups as well. And so in October of 2023, I was named chief operating officer. And so I retained all those direct reports. The chief engineer reports directly to me. And then I picked up the deputy secretary for modes, which encompasses ferry division, aviation, rail division, and what we call integrated mobility division, which is formerly bicycle and pedestrian and transit. And also have human resources, communications, and the strategic office of planning and programming.
Wow,
so that's
a lot.
That's kind of where my career has looked like.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like for as long as you've been at the NCDOT, the last 5 years have really seen your career take off and reach brand new heights. Does that feel true to you?
Yeah, I've basically been promoted 4 times in
Yeah.
a little over 4 years.
Exactly.
So, luckily for me, like most of those assignments, we always tell people that the chief engineer's office at North Carolina Department of Transportation, it's not about the chief engineer. It's an office of folks that are, trying to move the needle and trying to help as many people as they can. So, that whole time spent in the chief engineer's office was basically doing very similar roles to what the chief does anyway. So, those jumps weren't that big of a jump. Like, there was a lot of exposure to all what you were learning. Each step though came with a little bit more weight, a little bit more stress, and obviously more responsibility.
Yeah, of course. And I really like that mentality you brought up of it's not about the chief, it's about the department and what they can do as a unit and the best results that they can provide. That's really nice.
Yeah, I like it too.
That's great. So it sounds like you have plenty of moments that you can clearly focus in on. Do you have a favorite moment that you'd like to share about for your career at NCDOT?
Yeah, there's so many benefits for somebody who wants to work at North Carolina Department of Transportation. I mean, we're over 10,000 strong, number of employees. We touch so many different things. So there's so many opportunities, and I've had a lot of them in my career. But I really go back to that first position that I sort of was alluding to when I was in Asheville, North Carolina. I was a young engineer. I was working as a technician. I was still looking for my first engineering position. But when I took that responsibility, I was granted a whole lot of flexibility and autonomy. My time was mine. I got to build my schedule every day, and that allowed me to do a lot of different things. It allowed me to see a lot of different parts of the department, particularly a lot of the field functions. So I got to spend time on projects. I got to spend time in the lab. I got to spend time doing my thing, setting up my lab. At one point, I hired an intern, so I got to see what that whole process was like and having some responsibility for somebody else. And it was just an invaluable experience. Plus, at the time, Asheville, North Carolina was still a pretty sleepy little mountain town, but it had a lot of really cool things to do outside of work. So, I really liked mountain biking, and a lot of the folks that were working up there were of a similar age as me, and they were just starting their careers as well. And we developed a pretty tight knit group up there, and had a lot of fun in addition to learning a lot about what the department does.
Yeah, that's very cool, very exciting. I don't even have any words to describe any further.
Yeah, well, as my career progressed too, I mean, I had other opportunities that were also really, really special. I mean, my time as state materials engineer, I got to spend a long time in a role where, again, I had a lot of autonomy there. Uh, you know, you're responsible for something that not a lot of people know a lot about.
Yeah.
So you're really an expert in your field when you're in that role. And I built connections with materials engineers nationwide. Lots of connections with folks that do research at universities all over the country. And so really just building knowledge and a network, and learning how to solve problems, and learning how to manage a large group of people. I think at the time we had over 150 permanent employees, and then several consultants, and I got to work with all the industry groups that really provide what we're trying to do. All our general contractors, our asphalt producers, our concrete producers, our precast producers, our pre-stressed concrete producers, our pipe manufacturers, just you name it. I was exposed to so many different things and had so many opportunities in that role. So it really was I've really enjoyed my whole career, and I've had lots of great opportunities. So
Yeah, absolutely.
it's
That's
really
awesome.
hard to pinpoint them, but those two stand out quite a bit. And then, my time down in the central at the headquarters as chief engineer and chief operating officer, it's just, I've learned more in the last 4 or 5 years about how transportation works than I did in the previous years leading up to that. So,
Yeah.
again, it's just always about growth and always about learning, and I always fall back on just trying to help people, and I've had plenty of opportunities to do that. So that brings me a lot of joy.
Yeah, that's also just kind of like one of my own personal driving factors is always just trying to help people, just by providing, for me as a marketer, I'm providing resources and materials for people to learn and just kind of help them understand things that they might not have as much knowledge about. But another question I had for you with being at NCDOT for so long, I'm sure you've seen so much transformation within the department. I'd love for you to elaborate a little bit more on some of the things you've seen from your day one at NCDOT versus what's changed since then till now.
I'd say, moving away from, everything being a paper process, that's been probably one of the biggest changes. I mean, my career now spans almost 30 years, and actually, if you count that first internship, it's almost 35 years from when I first was exposed to NCDOT as an employee. And, pretty much everything, all the plans were, on paper, and there were plotters. And, over the course of that time, we moved into, doing CAD work for all the design. And now we're doing 3D work with ORD. And so that's been a huge transformation. Everybody having mobile communication, like instant contact with folks, instant feedback, instant response. That's been a very large change. I mean, I remember being in the lab. If you were out in the field back in the 90s, it was pretty hard to get up with you. I think some of the folks had pagers and things like that, but you're driving around in the mountains, and you get a page or something, it might be 45 minutes before you can find a telephone to call somebody. So like that's been a huge change. The ability to, after going through COVID, and the ability to do just what we're doing right now, having a virtual meeting, has really changed the way we do business, particularly in the last 4 or 5 years. So, a lot of that, there's been a lot of like little technology improvements as far as, machine guided, like surveying, machine guided, like paving processes, equipment, stepping into that realm. I use Chat GPT on a regular basis to help me craft, email responses sometimes. Sometimes if I'm challenged in trying to think what I want to say to a certain group of people in a presentation, I'll use AI. We've used machine learning and AI to try to help us solve big data problems.
Very cool.
Like even how we plan and program and track our cash balance is very data intensive and requires a lot of that similar type data analytics. And so, we spend a lot of time on that as much as we do on just trying to understand, normal engineering principles. So yeah, it's just the changes in that time frame have just been enormous.
Yeah. So you also mentioned, going more digital, making sure everything's, not done by paper, not done manually. So I feel like that's probably one of the initiatives of NCDOT for this year to just kind of continue in progress with that. Are there any other major initiatives that you guys are, working towards for this year and the years to come?
Yeah, again, so we take a team approach here, but Secretary Hopkins, he was named secretary, pretty much at the same time I was named COO because he was our former COO. So I took his place as COO. But some of his initiatives, which we all strive to try to help him achieve, one of the big ones is improving safety and mobility and working with our local partners to develop a transportation system that's going to meet the needs of all our state stakeholders, all the travelers across, all modes of transportation in North Carolina. Another big, really important thing to him is our workforce challenges and trying to move the needle on recruitment and retention and bringing in young talent and shaping the way that the future of our organization is going to look. So we've implemented some apprenticeship programs. We have a very strong transportation engineer and associates program for recent graduates where they come in and they spend 18 months kind of being shipped off to different business units within the department so they can learn the entirety of the department and have a bigger picture view of how everything works here. We really ramped up our efforts on high school and college internships and having those folks come in the summer and just get exposure to NCDOT to try to see if we can move the needle on folks wanting to work in this industry. So trying to do our best with like showing everybody, kind of like how special my career's been. Like I like to get up in front of those folks and talk to them and just tell them, I started as a technician. It wasn't an easy road for me. But, every bit of it was of value and shaped me as a human being. And, so, starting early, trying to get folks really interested in transportation. We do stuff with like trying to help develop the contracting industry, and we do a lot of on-the-job training with folks that are interested in being contractors. We have a summer accelerator program for our high school students where they get a little bit of exposure to what we do so they can see if they want to go down a technical path after they leave high school. And then a big one for me, we've just spent time going through an RFP process to get somebody to come in and help us build a leadership program. We've had those in the past, some internal programs that we've put on with the department, and they were a big influence on my career and helped me learn more about myself and be more self-aware so I can be more effective in the things that I'm trying to do. And so I'm really excited that we're reinstituting that and that I get to help shape that process.
That's very cool.
And then something that's really become a big deal for us is like really, really trying to embrace mental health awareness and providing training and resources for our many, many employees We've had 9 employees in the past a little over 12 months attempt to commit suicide, and sorry to be so somber, but
Yeah,
like
it's
it's
awful.
kind of a big deal.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
It's good to bring awareness to it.
Yeah, and some of them didn't make it out of it, so it's becoming a really big deal for us to like really try to address that. So that's also a big area of emphasis. And then we continue to constantly try to improve our internal processes to hopefully lead us to improve consistency and reliability on our project delivery. So those are some of the things that I talk about almost every day.
Okay. It sounds like not only are you trying to modernize what the NCDOT does as a business, but also what they provide as an employer and as a staple of North Carolina. It's really cool.
Yeah, and trying to really connect with younger folks.
Yeah.
Because we hear all the time when we're partnering with our industry partners, whether that be on the engineering and design side or if it's on the construction side, everybody has a challenge right now. We have over 20% vacancy at NCDOT, and I think we hear a lot from our partners. They're dealing with the same thing, finding good people, finding people that will stay, and so ways for us to like go above and beyond to be engaging for folks coming out of college and even folks coming out of high school that may go to a community college and may want to do something technical, but they don't want to get an engineering degree. And then we have a lot of other, business related aspects to the department where we have trouble recruiting folks and trying to get good people in those areas too. So anything we can do to be more engaging, we're really, really focused on.
Yeah, I mean, you're starting to sell me on it. Unfortunately, I live up in New England, and I'm not planning on coming, relocating down there. But it sounds like an amazing opportunity for anybody in that area.
Yeah, well, it's a bright, sunny day in North Carolina today. You come on down here, we'll find.
It's a very cold, windy day up here, so it does sound much nicer.
It's supposed to snow 4 inches this weekend, so I guess I'm dating the podcast at this point, but. I mean, as a member of the younger generation, I am Generation Z. So being part of Gen Z, it does appeal to me. And I'm sure a lot of the audience that's younger that might be listening to know that a company cares about you and knows that their values go further than their business initiatives, but also they roll into the lives that they're providing to people. And I mean, even connecting with the story you mentioned at the beginning of mountain biking with your coworkers, that's something that I know I personally look for. When thinking about my life. It's not just a job, it's a life decision. So it's really awesome that you're able to connect those pieces.
Yeah, we talk all the time that NCDOT is a family. And so we really try to emphasize that aspect. And it really is, for most of the organization. We spend 8 hours a day with a lot of folks. And it's probably more time than we get to spend with our biological families.
Right.
And so it's really important that you're around people that are like-minded, striving to help people, striving to, be a steward of the funding that we get and try to do the best we can for the state of North Carolina.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I was also going to ask you some just general questions about DOTs, just generally. So if you could, for like those who are unfamiliar, I'm sure most everybody's heard of DOT, but maybe don't really know exactly what it does and, and what the purpose of DOTs are. If you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, so, I'll start with our mission statement, which you guys could easily find if you Googled it. But connecting people, products, and places safely and efficiently with customer focus, accountability, and environmental sensitivity to enhance the economy and vitality of North Carolina. So it's a pretty simple mission statement. But what does that really mean? We're an agency that impacts every North Carolinian and folks that don't live in North Carolina that travel here for, to see our beautiful scenery, our beautiful mountains, our beautiful coast. So, a little bit more detail, that means, we're involved when you get your driver's license at 16 years old. We help move people and goods from one side of the state to another, and north and south, from the South Carolina border to the Virginia border. We we touch nearly all 10 million North Carolinians almost on a daily basis. We have over 81,000 state-maintained highways and roads and over 13,000 state-maintained bridges that connect people and goods throughout our wonderful state. While we're known as the good road state, we're also proud to be first in flight. We have 72 airports in North Carolina. 10 of those are commercial service airports, and 62 of them are general aviation airports. So they're little economic engines, all over the state of North Carolina, and we impact each one of those. They have a huge impact on their local economies and their local communities. We have the second largest ferry system in the country that's state maintained and state operated. That provides 24/7 service. So, one of the most beautiful parts of the world is our North Carolina Outer Banks. And a lot of those places you wouldn't be able to get there if we didn't operate those ferry systems, or if you could get there, it would be by boat that you had to, figure out how to get there on your own. And you likely wouldn't be able to get a vehicle on those, to certain destinations there.
Right.
So some of those things are just truly remote islands, and the ferry system helps people get there. So, that's a big thing that most people don't think about. We also, like in North Carolina, rail transportation is on the rise. We've broken annual ridership records over the last couple of years, and we continue to break monthly records almost in consecutive months. And so that's for intercity passenger rail. So that's a big service that we provide.
That's really interesting. I gotta say, going into this, I definitely did not register that aviation and ferries would be part of the North Carolina Department of Transportation. That's
and then
you've brought into my view.
Transit. I didn't mention transit, but we're involved in a lot of like pass-through federal money. So, grant applications from locals to be able to provide, bus systems and micro transit and those kind of things. And then, part of our highway program and also just some independent stuff that we do is, related to trails and, bikeways and then just sidewalks in general. With 82,000, state maintained miles of road, there's a lot of places there where you're also needing to get pedestrians places and get folks on bicycles places too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So pretty much if you have to go anywhere, NCDOT is right there.
Yeah, it's really, we have over 10 million citizens and really almost, you're almost impacting one of them every day. Like all of them every day. You're impacting almost most of them, a large portion of them every day. So
it goes beyond that too. All the tourists that want to come see your beautiful state as well. You're touching all of their lives every day as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, I know anytime I even just go on any type of road trip, I always judge a state by their roads and, the ease of transportation, because that's my main method of getting anywhere. So I know, from New Hampshire to Massachusetts, the roads aren't that great. And I know when I'm in Mass. So it's always interesting to think about the people that actually maintain and make sure everything's running smoothly and is operable.
Yeah. So we've heard a lot about... Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, part of our history is, for a long, long time, we've been known as the good road state. And one of the reasons why is because when you drive through North Carolina, we view that as like the window to the state. And so when you drive down I-95 or when you drive down I-77 or I-85, we try to make those roads, first of all, ride as smoothly as possible and provide that service. But we also have a lot of beautification efforts. We have a tremendous wildflower program. And so we get lots of feedback from folks driving through our state about how beautiful our roadsides are. And we're super proud of that. So, just to your point, that's something that's really important to us. We want to be the best at what we do, and we strive for that in all different areas.
Awesome. So obviously you've mentioned a couple times that you have a long history of wanting to have these beautiful roads and this scenic pass through of your state. Is there anything else interesting or any fun facts you can provide to us about the history of the North Carolina Department of Transportation or DOTs in general?
Yeah, which is really kind of a cool question. Like, you wouldn't expect to get asked something like that, but that's kind of neat. I mentioned good road state, and so a little piece of the history there. The reason why we're called the good road state is because we were one of the first states to issue bonds to help build roadways. So we actually were one of the first states to borrow money to help accelerate, getting farm to market roads paved.
Nice.
So that's kind of a cool little fact. That's where that name, the Good Road State, came from.
Makes sense.
And then also, North Carolina State's also known as First in Flight. The Wright brothers took off in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, which is on the Outer Banks. So, that's an interesting fact about North Carolina and related to transportation. And then the first railroad in North Carolina was built in 1833 in downtown Raleigh.
Oh, wow.
And it was used to move granite blocks for the construction of our state capitol building. And previous to that, horses and mules pulled carts. Well, after they built the tracks, horses and mules pulled carts down the track before we got an engine.
Okay. Those are very fun facts.
They are.
I always love fun facts, so I'm very glad that you've had a few very interesting ones to share.
Yeah, now I have something to bring to dinner today.
But hey, did you know?
Yeah, right, exactly. How do you know that? So I don't actually have any more questions for you. I don't know if Jillian has any more questions or if you have any final thoughts to share with everybody on the podcast. I think Jillian shook her head no to me, so you didn't see that, and I didn't communicate that. So she has no more questions if you have anything else to share.
No, I'll be honest with you. I could talk about NCDOT for, a lot longer, but, we covered a lot of really good topics today. If I was going to leave everybody with one final thought, I just want to make sure everybody understands how important transportation is to just everything that we do in life. It really does affect quality of life, and we try to keep that in the forefronts of our thoughts when we're going about doing what we're doing. And we really do try to be as much as we can to everybody who needs something from us. And so we strive to be the best we can be in that. And, we could use more funding. I'm always going to put out a pitch for that, that we could always use more funding going towards the resources it takes to deliver a quality transportation system across all modes. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you for speaking with us today, Chris, and about NCDOT and about yourself. You've shared a lot of very interesting and very fun information for us and then everybody who's listening. So, thank you, listeners, for your time today. And you can find our next episode wherever you prefer to listen to your podcasts. And so next time, I think who we're talking to, we are talking to Nick Road, the NPCA. So many N's to start with acronyms. So we hope you like the show, and you'll hear us next time.